When you boot up a video game, you step into the shoes of someone else. Whether it's a faceless chosen one with a vague path for you to follow, or a particular character within a linear story, that's the vessel you'll be occupying for the next 15 hours or so. You might even meet a few colourful characters along the way. Really fun ones with fully fleshed out vibrant backstories, or an intriguing past shrouded in mystery perhaps. Sometimes those NPCs seem to be having more exciting adventures than you, which is unacceptable because you've just shelled out $60 to star as a hero in your own tale of daring do. But what if we could trade places with those characters and find out how their stories unfolded instead? Here are 9 characters who we'd rather play than the protagonist, and there's a spoiler warning attached as we delve into their fates. Outlast II begins with you and your wife Lynn, investigative journalists covering the murder of a pregnant girl, being separated in the aftermath of a fiery helicopter crash, which you both survived. Too bad the pilot didn't get a higher billing. He's reduced to a pile of giblets strung up near the wreckage.
I don't even remember his name.
Feeling sufficiently manly and brave, you make your way further into the backwater residential area and soon regret that decision because of the sheer amount of nutters lurking in the undergrowth. And let's not forget the ones who've dispensed with stealth altogether and are happy to chase you down to deliver a swift death. Eventually you'll discover that Lynn has been kidnapped by the local cult, and it's your job to ride in and save her. Or not.
Lynn!
Despite having been through an horrendous ordeal, Lynn is fighting off braving cultists and diving through windows like an action hero. Meanwhile, Blake, the player character, is hiding under beds to avoid confrontations with decrepit old men who are most likely riddled with arthritis thanks to years of hard labour tilling the fields. Lynn's potential star power is quickly extinguished as she's bundled off by yet more cultists. Meanwhile, we're stuck with what should by all accounts be the insipid secondary character who gets bumped off in the first act, yet has somehow finagled himself into top billing. Lynn's fate is ultimately a disappointing one, and against all odds, Blake survives, despite the constant hallucinations and abject cowardice. Fallout 4 lets you step into the shoes of a doting parent at the onset of a nuclear apocalypse. After choosing which half of the couple you prefer to play, you meet Sean, your projectile-vomiting bundle of joy who frequently stashes fun surprises inside his nappy that are lovingly crafted by his butt. Following a brisk, panic-fueled jog to the closest vault, everyone hits the ice and waits to get woken up once the kerfuffle is over. As you'd expect, nothing goes according to plan. There's trouble in the vault and the residents are left in a deep freeze until your sole survivor is briefly awoken long enough to see their son kidnapped and their spouse murdered. If you haven't played Fallout 4, brace yourself for a major spoiler. Sean was kidnapped by the Institute so that they could use his pre-war baby DNA to help make better synths. By the time your character wakes up again, Sean is an old man and has taken over as head of the faction. And even though you can opt to side with him or against him, he remains surprisingly loyal and supportive because he's an all-around good guy. Mostly. I mean, there's a whole synth slavery debate to get into, but that's just a part of why playing as a kidnapped Sean would be so much more fun. Gordon Freeman is a silent protagonist of the Half-Life games, and frankly, a bit of a bore.
Man of few words, aren't you?
Devoid of personality, it wouldn't have been hard for any old NPC to outshine him. But lucky for us all, we were given Alex Vance, a sidekick who is far more qualified for the role of leading man, or lady in this case, than Gordon ever was. Alex has been a part of the Resistance, fighting the Combine for years, while Gordon has been tucked away in stasis after getting her mother killed in the Black Mesa incident. She knows her way around a gun, is a formidable force without one, can parkour her way around a level with the best of them, and is a more than capable hacker. And she has a pet robot dog. She's the perfect protagonist.
Good doggy.
Not only does she save Gordon at the start of Half-Life 2, she's also on a mission to save her father, which has a suitably dramatic ending. How her character was cooked up, mixed into the same world as the blandest character ever to grace video games, and ended up being an NPC sidekick is a mystery. Jade was busy kicking butt before Dying Light zombie outbreak even happened, as kickboxing champ the Scorpion. She was there for the outbreak and is part of a band of survivors who regularly risk their lives to get supplies for the normies. They even go up against a local psychotic warlord to get the only drug that can suppress the infection. The protagonist, Kyle Crane, on the other hand, that's you, is a complete and utter dimwit.
Why don't you just stick your head out the door and shout, "Here we are, come get us!"
And unwitting pawn of the corporation who are so clearly the bad guys. After he bungles his drop into the city, getting beaten up by bandits despite being the only one in the confrontation to be waving a gun around, Jade and her maybe boyfriend Amir show up to rescue him. Amir ends up getting killed for his trouble, with rabid zombies mauling him to death, while Jade drags your sorry ass to safety. Sadly, her storyline fizzles out, just like everyone else's around Crane, and it's a damn shame because she was one of the redeeming features in an otherwise lackluster and predictable story. Booker DeWitt isn't your typical hero, as you'll know if you've played Bioshock Infinite to its climax. But even with a twist ending typical of the series, and the golden-plated larynx of Troy Baker, he's still a largely underwhelming character. Elizabeth, on the other hand, has magical time-rending powers, which immediately makes her the more desirable character to play in the floating city of Columbia. We did get to step into her shoes in Bioshock Infinite's DLC Burial at Sea Episode 2, but she was stripped of her powers, and the gameplay was decidedly more stealth-based than Booker's trip to Columbia, which sees him zipping around skylines and mashing in faces with his trusty skyhook. I don't know about you, but I'd much rather be tearing holes in the fabric of space and time from the back of my giant robot bird than playing as an old drunk with a gambling problem who actually turns out to be a humongous arse. Perhaps it's my eternal soft spot for Nathan Fillion, or my preference for rogue classes in general, but we either need to be able to romance Cade 6, the Hunter, Vanguard and Destiny, or be able to play as him. Maybe in his own spin-off. Someone at Bungie must be on board the Fillion train, what with him lending his voice to characters in the Halo series, so I can keep dreaming for now. Our Guardian is a boring old blank slate with no voice who flits across the solar system saving the world. And when even that isn't enough to make someone interesting, you've got to wonder just what is going on. Cade 6, on the other hand, has a fairly tragic backstory and legendary skills as a hunter. On top of that, he's just so gosh darn likeable. I challenge anyone to hear him whisper the words "take me with you" and not be overcome with the urge to whisk him away on their ship for a life full of adventure. Cade 6 is as close to a video game Malcolm Reynolds as we're going to get for now, and his story is infinitely more interesting than our nameless Guardians. Barry is the bee's knees, and anyone who's played Resident Evil knows it. Although we eventually did get to play as Barry in 2015's Resident Evil Revelations 2, his story in the original game was much more intriguing. The statute of limitations on spoilers has officially expired on the 20-year-old game, in which Barry and Jill explore the mansion together, and we later find out that Barry has been setting Jill up to fail, to save the lives of his family. When it turns out that Barry's family isn't in danger, he returns to the side of the good guys. But creeping around the mansion setting up Jill would have been all kinds of fun. Potential gameplay aside, Barry is a dab hand with a gun, and an utter buffoon when it comes to mastering the ancient art of striking up a conversation, which makes every interaction with him a joy.
A second late, you would have fit nicely into a sandwich.
Really? Thanks.
He is a legitimate maniac, but he's our maniac. I don't know what it is about the name Barry and total idiocy, but the two go together like chocolate and peanut butter, or pineapple and pizza.
What do they put in this stuff? I feel like my brain is coming out of my nose.
Chubby, cheerful, and decked out like a peacock, Barry Wheeler is the antithesis of Alan Wake. And while he might not have believed Alan's stories about the creepy town of Bright Falls, he still showed up to lend a hand in looking for Alan's missing wife.
Tell me what to do to help, and I'll do it.
As silly as he may seem, Barry has a right idea about keeping the darkness at bay, wrapping himself in Christmas lights, popping on a headlamp, and getting hold of a flare gun. Meanwhile, Alan is too concerned with looking intense and brooding to follow suit, and sticks to a single flashlight, opting for style over substance. Or in this case, style over not being killed by shadow monsters. I know which one I'd rather be. Geralt starts out his video game journey with a severe case of amnesia, and while The Witcher's Tale is far from dull, we've gotten 3 games and 7 books out of it for a reason, Geralt himself is a massive bore. A grizzled, jaded man, he's the archetype of the reluctant hero, but is somewhat lacking in the personality and charm department, seemingly in a constant state of boredom throughout the series. Vesemir's character, on the other hand, manages to inject some life into the game. He's the oldest living Witcher, and even though he has his own traumatic past to wrestle with, he doesn't come off as apathetic, like Geralt. Admittedly, we'd rather play as Vesemir in his younger days when he was a little more spry.
I was young too once. Well, younger.
But playing a less moody version of Geralt without this sticky web of star-crossed lovers gets our vote. Video games are stuffed to bursting with interesting characters, and when the characters we're playing have all the personality of a damp lettuce leaf, we're left wondering why the NPCs are more fun to hang out with than the protagonists we're having to spend dozens of hours with. Let us know in the comments which characters you think are better than the protagonists in your favourite games, like this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to Logitech G for more weekly content. Thanks for watching.